Welcome back. You're watching Newsnight here on ENCA. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa is calling on ANC Youth League leaders to rebuild and renew the organization as the preferred party in South Africa. Ramaphosa says revival is crucial with elections just around the corner. Let's continue our unpacking of the president's address with some more reaction. I'm now joined by Sibusiso Twala from COSATU Young Workers Forum. He's the chairperson in the Western Cape. Good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsnight. We heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa in his closing address. A lot of expectations for the newly elected top six. Your initial reaction?
No, thank you very much, Abigail. And I think on behalf of the COSATU Young Workers Forum and the Progressive Youth Alliance as a whole, we welcome and congratulate the ANC Youth League in a period of 8 years of not having a legitimate structure. Young people in the villages, in the communities, in the institutions of learning, in the workplace and so forth have been yearning to have a legitimate voice that will speak for the destitute, the disenfranchised youth out there. And we've welcomed that, and with all the imperfections that might have been there, but a successful Congress that has elected a top five under the leadership of Comrade Colin Malachi. So we welcome that. They've gathered under the theme, economic freedom and social change now. We've said as the COSATU Young Workers Forum, we are less concerned about the concept of an economic freedom and social change now, but the content thereof. Because we gather at a time, this Congress gathers at a time where you've got more than 6 million young people who are not in education, who are not in employment. So where are they? Right? They add to the army of the unemployed. We have high levels of unemployment with young people. It's sitting at 60%.
Yeah.
We've got deepening inequality in the country. We speak about economic freedom, but to what extent? So we're waiting now to speak about the content and working with the ANC Youth League to indeed ensure that the aspirations and the plight of young people is taken forward. But we are very pleased to say that at least now we have a legitimate structure that is going to be working with the Progressive Youth Alliance and all young people.
You know, this topic keeps coming up, and even in my conversation with David and Ribona just before the break, the topic came up again, the issues that young South Africans are facing. But these are issues that's been there for decades, and it's always talked about, but we don't see practical action. And there hasn't been any practical action for so long. What is going to be different now? How do we move forward in a different direction, in a renewed direction, to ensure that young people can sit back and say, you know what, we have leadership, young leadership that we can trust to move us forward?
Absolutely, and hence why we speak about the content of the theme that the Youth League has come with in this particular Congress. We've said that if you take education, for instance, to what extent do we consolidate the gains that we have made over the last period of time, coming from fees must fall? Already there are challenges within the National Financial Aid Scheme around financial exclusion. To what an extent is the Youth League going to speak unto that? When we look at the workplace and the issues and other issues that continue to crop up, the cost of living continues to rise. So we need a particular caliber of a Youth League that is going to rise to the occasion to speak unto these issues. When we speak about higher education, for instance, to what an extent is this leadership of the Youth League going to play a role in ensuring that we encourage young people to take the TVET sector and be able to make it fashionable to say that young people must get artisan skills, they must become plumbers, they must become electricians, because these ultimately are the drivers of the economy. To what extent is this leadership of the Youth League going to speak unto graduate unemployment, which is a new phenomena that continues to take the place now? So this particular leadership of the Youth League has a huge responsibility.
They do.
How do we speak, for instance, to the National Youth Agency, the NYDA? So we need a particular caliber for Youth League. So we're happy that we've got a structure. As the Progressive Youth Alliance, as COSATU Young Workers Forum, for example, on the 6th, we are going to be taking to the streets in the National Day of Action under the banner of the Federation COSATU. So we want a Youth League that is going to join us, and not just to say that we are elected and it ends there, but to understand that the challenges that we are grappled with as a country, we need a particular Youth League that is going to speak to the aspirations of young people at different levels.
Let's unpack the fact that COSATU will be taking to the streets, and the organization is calling for young people and South Africa at large to take to the streets this coming Thursday,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken. What is the agenda? What is on a paper? What are the issues that you want to see being tackled?
Yes, there's a variety of issues, and the socio-economic issues in particular are the ones that we're looking at. The issue of the rise in the cost of living is amongst them, to say that the working class and the working people in this country, not just the working people, but also the unemployed, the standards of living is becoming unbearable, the cost of living and so forth. And in the main, we argue as the young workers that it affects young people the most. So the issue of petrol prices and so forth, these are part of the issues. And we've said that young people, let's take up the plight, because we are affected the most. It goes to a range of issues. The issue of crime that continues to be so prevalent in our country. The issue of increasing unemployment, which again we've said 60% young youth unemployment that we are facing as a country, it is a ticking time bomb. So we're saying that here's a legitimate structure now, a voice of young people that is emerging from Nasrec. We want a youth league that is going to be active, that is going to be in touch with the ground, that is going to speak onto these issues and be able. But we've also said that it needs to go beyond that. We don't just want a youth league that, of course, has a responsibility to agitate and lead young people, but a youth league that is going to come with the ideas that are going to speak to some of the solutions onto this. To what extent is this youth league ready? So we are very excited, but we've said that we congratulate the Youth League for having a legitimate leadership, but the challenges ahead is what is going to prove if indeed the Youth League is equal to the task.
And another issue that President Cyril Ramaphosa brought up in his closing address, he mentioned that without young people, the ANC might not be able to renew. And I saw a stat stating that millions of young South Africans that are eligible to vote have not registered because there's just not an interest. A lot of young South Africans are not interested in politics because of the past and what they've seen. A huge task for the newly elected top six of the ANC Youth League to gain the trust of young people, because come the 2024 general elections, the ANC needs the young vote. They need young people to vote for them if they want to stay in power.
Absolutely. I think it was Oliver Tambo who said, a country that does not take care of its youth does not deserve its future. Former President Kgalema says that the Youth League is a necessary irritation to the ANC. And I think listening to the president now, he actually empowers and says, Youth League, we're behind you. Play your role. And that is where we are. We don't need the Youth League now that is just going to speak about Mandela and Tambo, which is very important, of course, to be conscious, but a Youth League that is going to speak to the aspirations of young people. Because when you look at the membership of the Youth League, it goes from the ages of 15 to 35. So a young person who's in high school, to what an extent is the Youth League speaking to that person?
Exactly.
Where higher education does not have enough capacity to absorb the young people within that space.
Because a lot of young South Africans feel hopeless.
Absolutely. So what is the Youth League going to say to those young people? What is the Youth League going to say to young people within institutions of higher learning in terms of throughput rate, in terms of financial assistance, to the missing middle who actually do not benefit from NSFAS? These are the issues that the Youth League needs to be able to take up.
Definitely. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. We appreciate you joining us here to unpack what we heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa as he wrapped up the ANC Youth League's elective conference just a few minutes ago. That was Sibusiso Twala from COSATU Young Workers Forum. We are going to head over to our reporter, Moloko Moloto, who is on the ground. He's been following the ANC Youth League's elective congress since it started. Moloko, let's chat and unpack what we've heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa. He said the new Youth League can now step out from under the shadow of the ANC. What exactly do you think he meant by that?
Hello. Well, I think the speech by the ANC president was largely predictable. You obviously had to expect him to speak about the vacuum that had been there for the past 8 years when this structure did not have an elected leadership. And the fact that they have made history, he says, by electing a first female to occupy the position of deputy president, and that out of the 6 top officials, at least 3 of them are females. But obviously he also had to speak about the fact that they need to show that they are young people. They cannot think like old people. They need to inject new ideas, vibrancy and militancy. But also he mentioned another thing that had been reiterated yesterday by the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, discipline, going on to say that as much as you are going to be autonomous, that you would be running your own program, but you need to make sure that you align those with the policies and the predisposition of the mother body, the African National Congress. Now, obviously, him now referring to the founders of the ANC Youth League, your Nelson Mandela, your AP Mda, the likes of Anton Lembede, the founding president of the ANC Youth League, Lillian Ngoyi. Obviously, they were confronted with a completely different set of challenges at the time. The idea and the primary aim at the time was to attain political freedom. And they actually developed a program of action which they presented to the leadership of the African National Congress at the time. They even went to the house of ANC president at the time, Dr. Alfred Uma, and he did not agree with them on the militancy that they were proposing. And even in this case, essentially he's saying to them, come to us as the leaders of the ANC and bring your ideas. The question is, are they willing to listen to them, and are they amenable to accepting the ideas of young people when they raise them? We have seen what happened to the ANC Youth League of Julius Malema when they were raising very, very difficult issues and they disagreed with them. Ultimately, they were disbanded and some of them were fired. The jury is still out whether these new leaders of the ANC Youth League will be pliable to the demands or the dictates of the leadership of the ANC, or whether they will challenge them and say, this is what we believe as young people deserve, and will the ANC leaders listen to them? But let's listen to President Cyril Ramaphosa as he was speaking to those other issues.
I commend you for ensuring that this Congress spend time on the hard work of discussing and agreeing on policies that are aimed at the economic emancipation of young people, as well as contributing to the overall unity and the renewal of the ANC. Like the generation of comrades Anton Lembede and Nelson Mandela, the young lions of the 80s who formed student organizations and contributed to making this country ungovernable, and the 1991 generation who launched the Youth League, again, you are called upon to define yourself what it means to be a vibrant, strong, autonomous, militant, and disciplined ANC Youth League of the African National Congress. The successful holding of this conference has given a powerful voice not only to the ANC Youth League members, but to the young people of this country. Young people of this country have not had a voice for quite a long time. You are now the voice of the young people of South Africa. You must now emerge as an autonomous organization, and you are free now to be the ANC Youth League and get out of the shadows of, yes, being handheld, being controlled, and being led by the ANC. You are now the ANC Youth League.
Well, we are still in conversation with our reporter, Moloko Moloto, who is on the ground in Nasrec, Johannesburg. Moloko, the president also unpacked some of the tasks for the Youth League, especially leading up to the 2024 elections. What are some of those issues?
Yes. Well, obviously, there's a high number of young people in South Africa who are really not eager to participate, particularly in the elections. They have chosen not to vote, and they are so many to a point that should they decide to give their vote, collective vote, to a single party, that party may even become the governing party. Now, he is saying the ball is in your court as the young people of the ANC to ensure that you galvanize support for the ANC ahead of the 2024 national elections. You would recall that the ANC actually admits, even going to their national conference in December, that their fortunes are on a decline, so much that they admit that they may even go below 50%. Whether the ANC Youth League will resonate with young people on the ground, who have their views, by the way, who are able to observe and decide on what is good for them. It is not going to be an easy task for these members, new leaders of the ANC Youth League. The issues of HIV and AIDS, that he says they must develop programs to ensure that at least they heighten awareness around the pandemic. Now, he told them what presumably they know. The issue of joblessness. They know it. Of course, in their political report yesterday, the Youth League said that unemployment among the youth in particular is a ticking time bomb. We know during the release of the quarterly labor force survey by statistician General Risenga Maluleka for the first 3 months of this year, joblessness remains high. And he pointed out that unemployment among the university graduates has actually doubled. 10 years ago, in 2013, it was standing at about 5%. Today, it is standing at about 10.5%. So that certainly is an issue. And about 3 million young people who are not in education, in training, they are also not employed. What are they doing? But also, is it fair for the president, who is presiding over a governing party that has the majority, to kind of like push some of the responsibilities in terms of generating ideas to young people who do not even have executive authority? Because he is the president, he's got a cabinet, there's parliament, there are many other institutions. And as much as he has said previously that COVID has disrupted some of the programs, today we heard him saying that the investment drives and some of the programs were also disturbed by the energy crisis. It is his government that is presiding over this energy crisis that we are seeing. And the issue of energy, we all know, has nothing to do with international factors. It has everything to do with what the previous administrations of the ANC decided. Now, let's listen to the president, of course, as he continued to speak to what he would expect to these young people of the ANC.
You took time to deliberate on how the Youth League must be organized and structured to respond to challenges facing young people. There are therefore a number of key tasks ahead of you that you must execute. You must rebuild and renew the ANC Youth League as the preferred leader of young people in South Africa. To do that, the ANC Youth League must be a disciplined organization. It must adhere to the values of our movement. You are required to mobilize young people for economic freedom and social change. But not only mobilize them, but come up with ideas, come up with strategies on how best to achieve economic emancipation. You are also required as the ANC Youth League to mobilize for a decisive victory of the African National Congress in 2024. You are the motive force that we have longed to have to ensure that we bring out our people in their millions to support and to vote for the ANC to ensure an overwhelming victory of the African National Congress in 2024.
Well, that was ENCA reporter Moloko Moloto just wrapping up for us what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say during his closing address at the ANC Youth League Congress. We're going to continue this analysis, and rejoining me in studio now is political analyst Rebona Tau. She's still in studio with us. Rebona, let's just unpack that last bite we heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa. He did mention that young people had not had a voice for so long, and he hopes now that the ANC Youth League will be that voice for South Africans. A lot of young people are not interested in politics. How do we galvanize? How do we encourage young people? And do you think the ANC Youth League has that capacity?
I think first and foremost what the president missed to say, because if you recall, in 2012, this is after the Youth League Congress in 2011, the Galaga that took a resolution of economic freedom in our lifetime. The ANC was not happy with the Youth League because the Youth League was pushing on serious policy transformations that the ANC felt they were lacking. And if you go and look at the program of action of 1948 and what was raised by the Youth League in 2011, the Youth League was merely reminding the ANC. And he was the chairperson of the appeals committee that led to announcing that Julius Malema has been expelled from the Youth League. So I think the ANC is not honest in the sense of the Youth League was at its peak when the president of the Youth League was expelled, when the NEC of the Youth League was disbanded by the leadership that he led with, And you can't say you want a Youth League that is alive when you, as the ANC, have silenced that Youth League. The Youth League that we are seeing today has been silenced by the ANC, deliberately so. So I don't know how they wanted to come back alive. Will they give them space to lead as young people and also take the criticism when the Youth League will criticize them as the ruling party? Because they, as the ANC, they're the ones in government. And if they don't, look at because in 1994, yes, the ANC delivered political freedom, and that was the generation of Nelson Mandela of 1944. But since then, the economic freedom, the ANC had two-thirds majority, failed to change a lot of things in this country. It continues to just have slogans, about, liberating the people of this country. But if you look at the poverty lines, they are forever widening, and I think the ANC needs to be honest with itself. What kind of a Youth League it wants,
Rebona, you don't sound too optimistic. We heard the president mention organizational autonomy quite a few times. He also mentioned that he would like to see the ANC Youth League separate from the ANC mother body and not as an appendage. Do you have hope, and looking at how things have unfolded in the past, do you have hope that moving forward this is how the ANC Youth League will function?
The issue of autonomy has come out, since Friday, and I think the current leadership, it's up to them. If they want the autonomy of the Youth League, it's up to them to say to the ANC, it's enough, because it's been a decade now since the silencing of the Youth League. So it will have to be this newly elected leadership that will have to, decide on what kind of legacy they want to leave behind.
Yeah, definitely. Before we wrap up, I really want to touch on this issue because gender-based violence is an issue plaguing the youth of South Africa and South Africans at large. The president did mention it briefly, but a huge issue facing the ANC Youth League top six, because this is something that is damaging young people in South Africa. How do they make sure that we see progress there?
I would want to say I agree with what David Mohale said earlier on, that most of the things that the president was raising is things that, as the ANC, should be dealing with. The Minister of Police
should be
he's got a responsibility So it's either you want a youth league that tomorrow's going to wake up and call a press briefing and tell the Minister of Police that he's not doing his job and he should be recalled. Because there's a lot of things that, there's July unrest that happened, and the Minister of Police was left and so forth. So there's been a lot of criticism around the Minister of Police. The question is the youth league brave enough to say this man needs to go?
Well, we'll see how it develops. Rebona, thank you for your time. We appreciate your insights as well. Thank you for joining us.